What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are going to predict the UFC Champions of 2023. We're going to be predicting who finishes the year as champion within the UFC. Now, of course, we have got 12 divisions. Will there be 12 divisions at the end of the year? I'm not so sure, but we'll get into that later into the video. And of course, there was only 3 or 4 that remained champion during 2022. Volkanovski, of course, was one. Nunes, of course, with the featherweight title, and Shevchenko with the flyweight title, and of course Ngannou as well. So there wasn't, too many retaining their belts. Obviously, Leon Edwards picked up the welterweight title, as Makhachev picked up the lightweight title. Of course, Alex Pereira defeated Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title. The light heavyweight title is currently vacant. And obviously, Zhang Weili came away with the strawweight champion after it. Went from Rose Namajunas to Carla Esparza. And, of course, in the bantamweight, the women's bantamweight division, Nunes picked up her title again after Juliana Pena. So, yes, let's get into the video and let's predict who are going to be the champions at the end of the year. First of all, at strawweight, of course, we're going to be looking at strawweight as a whole, and it is, of course, Zhang Weili. Now, of course, I think Zhang Weili is just a little bit too much for this division. I think she's a little bit too far ahead of the division. She showed that against Carla Esparza. She showed that against Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the rematch, of course, back in June in Singapore. And she showed that she's a very notable champion and one to be wary of. Now, of course, the women's the bantamweight division has been up until Juliana Pena dethroned, and that was quite quite a dominant division, of course, for Nunes. Shevchenko's dominated the lightweight division. The strawweight division has been the more sort of more challenging division, the more exciting division to watch because it's a bit less predictable. With obviously Jessica Andrade as champion, with Nunes as champion. Obviously, Carla Esparza later into her career became champion once again, and we've got these fantastic contenders in Amanda Lemos, Mackenzie Dern, Marina Rodriguez, Yan Xiaonan, of course. But I can see Zhang Weili, finishing them all at the moment. I think Zhang Weili is a little bit too much for them, especially training at the PI now. Of course, she's getting more dedicated training, more closely knit training, and more personalized training. Obviously, in China, you saw the difference between her training in China, and of course, between the rematch with Rose Namajunas, the first night she lost, of course, and obviously the second one was a lot closer. But obviously, within those periods, she was training with Henry Cejudo. You saw the leaps and bounds she came on, and her wrestling and the grappling has really progressed as well. And I think she could be too much. Amanda Lemos is probably the most concerning contender if it's Zhang Weili right now because she holds that power. But Jessica Andrade beat her. Jessica Andrade submitted her very fantastically with that standing arm triangle, of course. Rose Namajunas, where is she at the moment? Obviously, she just recently lost in a grappling bout against Gillian Robertson. Obviously, Gillian Robertson, a very well-known and high accomplished grappler, so that's no sort of feat on Rose Namajunas, so to say. But where's her head at? She didn't look great, did she, against Carla Esparza in a rematch? And she doesn't seem to fare well being champion. She's okay on climbing up the mountain, but once she's at the top of the mountain, she seems to struggle mentally with that. And I think it's shown in both title reigns. And it's interesting to see where she'll be at. Obviously, she's maybe mentioned flyweight, but I don't think that will happen just yet. But yeah, I think Zhang Weili probably defends her belt twice. Probably against Amanda Lemos and Marina Rodriguez, or maybe Yan Xiaonan. If the UFC, obviously, they're opening up the travel again. More so this year, more so than last year. Obviously, we had bits here and there last year, but it's predominantly Apex this year. I think it's going to be vice versa. Although, coincidentally, I think 3 or 4 of the first 5, 6 events are at the Apex. But maybe they want to do a card in China or in Asia later on in the year. And you've got Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan, of course. And I think that would be a fantastic fight. But I do think Zhang Weili keeps a hold of their belt this year. And maybe even target flyweight, sorry. But yeah, I'm going to go with Zhang Weili to round out 2023 as the strawweight champion. Now, in the flyweight division, this one's a bit more of not a hope, but I think we saw last year maybe the gap close on the flyweight division. Of course, Valentina Shevchenko went the distance with Tyler Santos in an incredibly close fight, but there was claims that she was injured going into that and wasn't 100%. So was that the case that she went in there injured and couldn't perform to her best, or was Tyler Santos just very good on the night? And the division is growing and performing and getting better. And with each month and year that passes by, that gap will close down because they just naturally training together, fighting together. The throne, the queen isn't always queen forever, is she? And I think this year she will not be the flyweight champion. Now I have gone with Man on the Road, maybe because the IMAF. If you're an MMA fan, you should be high on IMAF right now because that is the initial pathway to get into professional MMA now. It's the creme de la creme of amateur MMA, in my opinion. Obviously, you've got the World Series, you've got the European Series also. And, you see Mohamed Mokhtar come through there, you see Man on the Road come from there. Christian Leroy Dunkley, Saudi UFC, has come through there. Amanda Hebert has come through there. So it's becoming the point of call if you want to become a UFC star or a fighter with any organisation. But if you win IMAF, if you win the World Champions at IMAF, then you're pretty much set on the right path to go to a Brave or a Cage Warriors and build your career there, become champion there, and then you'll be in the big divisions. And I think Thoreau becomes the first UFC champion who's won IMAF. Of course, the race is on between her and Mokhtar, in my opinion. Amanda Hebert is a little bit behind, and she's bounced between weight classes. So yeah, I think Man of the Road picks it up, and that might not be because she defeats Valentina. Again, we'll have a look at the rest of the divisions as they play out, but I think Manon does finish this year as champion. Now, of course, the question mark on that is she hasn't fought over 25 minutes yet. She's not been in a main event yet, and that's something she wants and hopes to get before she goes into that title bout. But she has beat Jennifer Maher and Caitlin Chukagian, two former challengers. If she can get a win against maybe an Alexa Grasso, an Erin Blanchard or Tyler Santos would have been perfect. Maybe she waits to see how that fight plays out. But then again, Valentina isn't going to want to be, too inactive, so to speak. I think there's targets maybe for London or Vegas in March, maybe in April, for sure. But, I think Man on the Road is the flyweight champion come the end of the year. And that is because I've got with Valentina Shevchenko to be the bantamweight champion towards the end of the year. Now, there's a lot of claims for the trilogy, of course, between Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. A lot of people thought Valentina Shevchenko won the second fight between the two and should probably be the bantamweight champion, or should have been the bantamweight champion on the night that they fought. But also, Amanda Nunes has almost completed the game at this point. She's done everything she needed to do. She was tested against Julian Pena. Has she still got the hunger? Has she still got the fight and the spirit of the lioness? Because, she's beaten everyone that's put in front of her. And obviously Julian Pena defeated her. And there's some questions as coming into motherhood and starting a family, pushed her beyond that sort of pivotal edge that you have as a fighter. But obviously she somewhat turned the clock back against Julian Pena in the second fight, and she showed why she's on top of the bantamweight division right now. And the greatest of all time when it comes to women's MMA. But I think, maybe a Juliana Pena trilogy is in her sort of her close future right now. But I don't know what Amanda Nunes can do. And, there's nothing in the featherweight division for her, with all due respect to the featherweight division. So it's purely bantamweight. And she has clocked the game. So do we do the trilogy? Or does Nunes ride into the sunset this year? And that allows Valentina Shevchenko to move up and maybe become a two-weight champion. That's the sort of thinking I'm going ahead with. I think Nunes will be retired towards the end of this year. And, she's looking in tremendous shape if he's seeing a training video, so maybe not. Maybe she still has got a lot of gas left in that tank. But personally, I think we see the last of Nunes this year and what career it would have been. Hopefully she can ride out on high and Valentina Shevchenko can take on maybe Ketlin Vieira, Juliana Pena, maybe. But, I think we'd all would watch the trilogy again. But yes, moving on now to the featherweight division. Now, for the sake of it, I have gone with Amanda Nunes. But I do think this is the last year we see the featherweight division in the UFC. I think the experiment's run its course. It hasn't been successful. It hasn't been strongly populated. Obviously, it was created when Chris Cyborg came into the UFC, of course, with the likes of Tonya Radinger in there, Felicia Spencer, Holly Holm tried a sprint in there. Megan Anderson was in there. Currently got Norma Dumont and Danielle Worth, and it isn't an exciting division, and there's talent there that are not wasting their careers, but they're not progressing because they're not getting the fights and the competition that they deserve to then be able to build on to fighting Nunes, because Nunes is so much further ahead of them. Obviously, we had Jermaine Durandame, of course. Let's not forget the Young Lady, and if I'm the UFC, I sell the featherweight division. I sell the likes of Norma Dumont and Danielle Worth to Bellator probably because they've got a good featherweight division with Leia McCourt and Sinead Kavanagh and obviously Chris Cyborg, etc. That's the place I'd go. Or maybe to PFL. If you want to keep them on ESPN, give them to PFL. Albeit they haven't quite got, obviously they've got the lightweight division. I don't know if they're going into a featherweight division this year. Off the top of my head. So I think, Nunes will reign supreme. She will be the last UFC featherweight champion. And I think going to 2024, with that division being probably written off, and as I said in previous videos, hopefully we get an atomweight division in the UFC for the women, or we get a cruiserweight, or, a 195-pound division. But yeah, if I'm the UFC, I scrap the featherweight division and bring in, obviously, an atomweight division. And of course, the only caveat is, and, maybe you just do this as a one-off bout, is obviously the Nunes Kayla Harrison situation. Obviously, there was a lot of talk up until last year, or late last year, when Kayla Harrison suffered her first professional loss. That we want to see the likes of Harrison versus Nunes, or I think more of the talk was Cyborg Harrison, because that seems more doable with Bellator and PFL seemingly more wanting to work with each other. Of course, Kayla Harrison signed a new multi-year contract with PFL at the end of 2021. But yeah, that'd be the only fight that makes interest. But with all due respect to Kayla Harrison, it'd be a great fight. It'd be great, a great sale. But you would put Nunes as a quite heavy favourite going into that. But it would be interesting, to say the least. But yes, I think Nunes rounds out the year as the featherweight champion. But I do believe that division will be shut down come the end of the year. And as we move on, I'm going with Brandon Moreno for the flyweight division in the men's roster, of course. Now, this fight takes place at UFC 283. We've got Figueiredo versus Moreno 4. And I think, again, it's a very close fight. It's the reason why we're seeing it for a fourth time. Because, the first one was a draw, which meant Figueiredo kept his belt. Obviously, then Moreno submitted him. And then we had another close fight with Figueiredo picking the belt back up. These are two clearly the best flyweights in the division right now. So you've got Pantoja, you've got Nicolau, you've got Mokaev coming up through the ranks on the hunt to become the youngest UFC champion. But seemingly, he just dislocated his shoulder. So, he's aiming to be at UFC London, but it's not the predominant spot he wanted to be in going into this year. He wanted to be fighting 3-4 times this year and really put himself into a title shot going into next year, if not towards the end of this year, if that's possible, with 3 good wins under his belt, which I think it would be. But whoever comes out victorious at 283, again, it's a very close fight. I can see Figueiredo winning. I can see also Figueiredo maybe missing weight. Obviously, he's had struggles making 125 prior, so if he did that, he'd lose the belt on the scale. Of course, Brandon Moreno is currently the interim champion. So it would be interesting to see how that plays out. And in fact, Figueiredo missing weight hadn't been a fact that I completely thought about. And that would, maybe perk up interest into a fifth fight if Figueiredo won that. But of course, I think if he missed weight, would it be in the second or third time he's done it in the last 5-6 fights? Then no, I'm sure he'd be moved up to bantamweight. And that's predominantly why my thoughts are Brandon Moreno finishes the year as flyweight champion anyway. Because I think even if Figueiredo wins and becomes undisputed, I think his days at flyweight are very numbered. I think he moves up to bantamweight prior to the end of the year. And I think Moreno walks out this year champion in my personal opinion, whether he has 2 fights against Pantoja or Nicolau later on in the year. Obviously, he looked very good against Kai Kara France. Unfortunately, we lost Askarov to retirement this year. That would have been a good fight to see. And he was, certainly, on his way to a title contention, challenge. So it would be interesting to see where the landscape is in 12 months of this flyweight division. 3 years ago, it was the division that everyone almost wanted to get rid of. And now it's one of the most exciting divisions to watch, in my opinion. And yeah, I do think Brandon Moreno walks away this year as champion still. Um, in the bantamweight division, I've gone with a controversial one. Now, of course, recently, obviously, Aljamain Sterling has just revealed that he's got a torn bicep, so he won't be fighting too soon. He wants to get that fixed and get that sorted, which is he's within his right to do so. He's the champion. He wants to be, fighting healthy. And there is a lot of hypocrisy in this, particularly on Twitter, in this community. Of course, recently we just seen TJ Dillashaw get absolutely hammered for walking into a fight injured against Aljamain Sterling, ironically. But now it's Aljamain Sterling who said he's injured, he doesn't want to fight. People are, complaining he's been inactive too long. He's not an active champion, which is just nonsense. He fought twice last year. He fought, 2 or 3 times a year before that, even, perhaps. And I think, he's doing the right thing. He wants to keep holding that belt. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Henry Cejudo returning, but I've actually gone with the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley, to be bantamweight champion at the end of this year. Now, whether that's maybe on an interim basis, I don't know. As the landscape is right now, I would push Marlon there and Corey Sandhagen back to 285 and make that an interim bantamweight title, depending on how long Aljamain, plans to sit out for. As we said, Henry Cejudo is waiting in the wings to return. When is he going to return? Who is he going to return against? Your favourites now would be against Sean O'Malley, but of course, if he steps back in, he's almost warranted a title shot off the bat. So this division has just got very interesting again. I mean, it's one of the most interesting divisions in the MMA and one of the most exciting divisions to watch, in my opinion, up there with the lightweight division. But more than outlandish prediction, I think definitely Aljamain Sterling finishes the year in the featherweight division, and maybe Henry Cejudo too, especially if he does win the title. Let's say he wins the title in June. I think he tries to go up for that quadruple C against Volkanovski or winner of Volkanovski and Emmett and Rodriguez, who also fight for their interim title at 284, of course. But obviously, Volkanovski is fighting for the lightweight title, so that also has its own stipulations if he wins that, as to where he plans to take his career next, whether he plans to come back down to 45 or stay at 155, where there's a lot more fresh blood for him. But yeah, I've gone with Sean O'Malley to be the bantamweight champion towards the end of this year, but I do understand that's quite a more outside pick. But he impressed me against Petian nonetheless. At featherweight, I'm remaining with Alex Volkanovski. I think no matter what happens at 284, I think he comes back and remains the featherweight champion throughout 2023. I would have preferred him to fight Oliveira. I think Oliveira versus Volkanovski is a much more interesting tighter fight to pick than Makhachev and Volkanovski, particularly after what we saw with Makhachev against Oliveira. I think Makhachev is a very tough competitor and tough opponent for Volkanovski. Obviously, we know Volkanovski doesn't quit. We know he can be perfect over 5 rounds, that he showcased that against Max Holloway. But Islam Makhachev is a big guy, and he's got fantastic wrestling, fantastic submissions. If Volkanovski gets caught, it may be a similar position to Brian Ortega. Can he escape Islam Makhachev's grip? I don't know, but I do think that Volkanovski is good enough to beat both Emmett and Yair Rodriguez, and probably maybe Arnold Allen as well. Arnold Allen is probably an outside shout. Of course, we crowned our second British UFC champion this year with Leon Edwards, and Arnold Allen is probably not too far behind him in the pecking order. Obviously, you've got Tom Aspinall and Mohamed Mokaev probably behind Arnold Allen also in the running for the next British champion, in my opinion. But I do think Volkanovski showcased last year that he has the capability to beat everyone that stands before him in this featherweight division. Obviously, you've got Ilia Topuria coming through, you've got Mosai Ithloev coming through. Cameron Cater looked good in his last fight. He got injured in his last fight. He looked good against Josh Emmett, let's not forget. But he's still dangerous. Obviously, Brian Ortega got injured in his last fight. He's still dangerous. And again, for what that fight was with Volkanovski, he did have a very close moment to submitting Volkanovski, so there's enough intrigue to run that one back, perhaps. But again, I do think Volkanovski probably fights 3 times a year. He's an active champion normally. But I think maybe he loses to Makhachev, returns to 145, and business as usual against the winner of Emmett and Rodriguez, and then probably gets one more later in the year, probably at MSG, or maybe in December against an Arnold Allen, probably. I'd put my money on. But yes, I do think Volkanovski retains the title. Of course, at lightweight, I'm sticking with Islam Makhachev. I do think Islam Makhachev gets the job done this year. Whether he loses to Volkanovski or not, I think he showcased against Charles Oliveira the caliber of fighter he is. There was a lot of questions going into that fight, of course. With him not having fought a top 10 opponent prior to going into that fight against Charles Oliveira, but he certainly proved that he's one of the most dangerous fighters in this division across all areas as well, not just wrestling. And Volkanovski could beat him at 284. And something in me says Dustin Poirier might finally reach undisputed gold this year also. But I think if that was the case, I think Volkanovski beats Makhachev, Poirier beats Volkanovski, then Makhachev regains that title by beating Dustin Poirier. That would be my sort of trail of thought going into that one. And Makhachev, ends this year probably pound for pound number one, as well as the lightweight champion. And again, from the evidence we saw against with his performance against Oliveira, there's nothing to say why he can't be champion towards the end of the year. Why can't have the perfect 2023, and maybe even be fighter of the year perhaps going into this year. Now, what does throw a spanner into the works is obviously where Khabib has just recently announced that he's taken a back step from sport entirely. He's not a coach no longer. He had a fantastic year last year as a coach, did Khabib. And he's been a big part of that success that that Jim has had, especially since the passing of his father. He's carried the mantle on and achieved father's dream, in his words. With him becoming champion, of course, Makhachev becoming champion following that. So yeah, it could be an interesting year, but I do think Makhachev finishes this year as the lightweight champion. And I've got in the welterweight division Leon Edwards. I think Leon Edwards retains his title this year. Now maybe that's more hopeful and more sort of a wish and a desire more so than my sort of brain thinking. Maybe it's more heart talking than my brain talking. But I think he gets the job done this year. And hopefully he does headline 286. He deserves that homecoming after becoming the champion again after that fantastic head kick knockout against Kamaru Usman. But there's a lot of talk about who he's going to fight. Now, many people think it should probably be Usman again for the trilogy. He was once the pound-for-pound king. He deserves to get it back for everything that he'd done in this sport and that run he went on. His resume has earned him an immediate shot. But if he's got problems with his hand, then, I think the undesirable pick is Jorge Masvidal. But, personally, with what happened in London 2019, it's the perfect fight. It makes sense. Back in the O2, albeit Jorge Masvidal is on a losing streak, he sells pay-per-views still. And, there's enough blood there to make that fight and make an interesting fight and make a really good fight that sells. Because obviously, let's not forget, this fight will hopefully be on British time. So you need that little bit of superstar power to get the American audience involved as well. Masvidal does that more so, with all due respect, than a Bilal Muhammad, who's probably definitely more deserving of a title shot. So, if you're going to play out this year, maybe Leon beats Masvidal in London and Usman in London. And then I think he beats Bilal Muhammad. I think he could beat Colby Covington. Also, obviously, the question mark is where Khamzat Chimaev is at. Because I think Khamzat Chimaev is a scary prospect. Again, I think Leon Edwards has the capability to beat him. But he's the one that I'd be worried about most. But of course, you've got to bring in the weight disparity and the weight sort of problems that Chimaev has suffered this missing weight by 9 pounds in September. It's just not good enough. But I do think Leon Edwards remains champion this year. But again, maybe that's more of an outside prediction more than a realistic pick, so to speak. In the middleweight division, again, maybe more optimistic. He is my favourite fighter, but I think Adesanya gets his crown back. I think he finishes the year as the middleweight champion. He's licked his wounds, gone back and licked his wounds And, really, he was 4 minutes away from, probably being fighter of the year, in all honesty, because he put on a fantastic performance against Alex Pereira. But of course, Alex Pereira, knocked him out in the fifth round, picked up the belt, and has become the kryptonite to Israel Adesanya, beating him twice in kickboxing and now once in MMA. Where Israel Adesanya goes next, I don't know. Again, if I was a matchmaker, I would have, especially with Paulo Costa playing games with the contract, etc. Now that might have been on the UFC's thought for, pushing a fight that had, didn't have either party or both parties' signature within agreement. As more they promote fights in hoping to almost pinpoint the fighters into signing contracts, perhaps. But Paulo Costa withdrew from that fight, in my opinion. Maybe it was too short for Alex Pereira, but Robert Whittaker, in my opinion, has done enough to warrant a title shot next. With his performance against Vettori, I think he's done fantastic. Well, he's comfortably shown that he's, probably number 3 in this division right now. You would have said number 1 with Israel at the top, but now with the pecking order changing a little bit, it's clearly number 3. Israel's number 2, and Pereira's number 1. But there's probably an argument based on their work that Robert Whittaker's still number 1. Israel Adesanya and Whittaker are probably still the best 2 in this division, just based on what we've seen. Obviously, that's a little harsh on Alex Pereira because he's just beaten the champion, but we haven't seen as much on his resume. He's only been here for 4 fights. But I do think Adesanya, I think he's got like gamer instinct in it, where he's going to want to retry and redo the level as much as possible until he beats the level. And in this case, that level was obviously Alex Pereira, probably the final boss in his career that he wants to get 1 win over. And I think he has the capabilities and the potential to be able to rerun that back and beat Alex Pereira. He had him clipped and hurt in the first round. He had him, if he had better jiu-jitsu, he might have submitted him in the third round, but unfortunately his jiu-jitsu wasn't the best on the night. But if he strengthens that side of his game up, he has the potential, obviously, in my opinion, to finish Alex Pereira. And he certainly has the ability, to beat him, in my opinion. I think he's shown that. It's just been unfortunate that he's been knocked out twice when he's been in control of fights or ahead in fights. And of course, the first kickboxing battle was a unanimous decision, which was very close also. But yeah, I think Adesanya becomes middleweight champion once again once this year is over. And yes, moving on to light heavyweight, of course, I've gone with the current middleweight champion. I've gone with Alex Pereira to become the light heavyweight champion towards the end of this year. And my reason for that is, of course, at 283, we have got the vacant light heavyweight title up for grabs between Jamahal Hill and Glover Teixeira. Now, obviously, Jamahal Hill has become very undesirable as a fighter on Twitter. We won't get into those, but whoever wins that fight, I think if Glover wins that, does he retire in Brazil? Of course, being on top of the throne once again in his home nation. Can he call it a day there and let his almost protege up, Alex Pereira, or Jamahal Hill wins, and we don't know where Yuri Prohaska's at later in the year. Will Alex Pereira say, "Hey, you just defeated my coach, my sort of teacher, the master, so to speak," and can the student become the master and avenge that loss? We know how big and how the frame of Alex Pereira. He looks huge for a middleweight. He looks huge for a light heavyweight also. And I think this year he could potentially go up a division and challenge for the title and pick up the title. I can see him beating Jamahal Hill. I can see him, obviously he won't fight Glover because they train together, but I can see him beating Glover. I can see him beating the likes of Ankalaev, the Blachowicz. The Yuri Prohaska fight would be interesting against Alex Pereira, but Yuri Prohaska does have the not tendency, but he can show glimpses of looking a little reckless with his style. Of course, he's very unorthodox and spectacular to watch. But maybe he could get caught by Alex Pereira. Well, obviously, with Alex Pereira, you've got to be almost pinpoint perfect to get a win. So yeah, I've gone with Alex Pereira to become the light heavyweight champion. Maybe he becomes a 2-weight champion. Maybe he finishes the year's champ. But I think if he went up to light heavyweight, he'd stay at light heavyweight and potentially relinquish that that middleweight belt, which potentially opens up the trilogy for Whittaker and Adesanya. And of course, finishing the year at heavyweight, finishing the year as heavyweight champion, is of course Cyril Gane. Now, there's some talk about where Francis Ngannou is at right now, contractually with the UFC. I saw a video from MMA On Point, I believe, stating that his contract runs out on January 20th. And of course, the past 12 to 18 months, maybe even 24 months now, there's been a lot of talk between Ngannou and the UFC about about his contract and wanting more money and more finances. Partially the reason probably why the John Jones fight hasn't happened. Of course, he's been injured. And of course, the fight with Cyril Gane was very close. Obviously, Ngannou used his sort of experience and wrestling credibility and the ability to really overpower Cyril Gane in those later rounds to retain the title. But I think potentially Gane definitely has the capabilities to beat Ngannou. And if he puts those things right that he didn't get in the first fight right, then I'm sure he would get his hand raised and has the potential to get his hand raised. But also, there's a question mark around John Jones. Does he come back this year at heavyweight? I believe Cyril Gane can beat John Jones. I think he's technically and skillful enough to beat John Jones. My question is, does John Jones beat Ngannou? And I think Cyril Gane definitely has the capabilities to beat both of them, but I'd be interested to see who he'd be standing in there. I'd rather the John Jones fight just as a spectacle because we've already seen Ngannou versus Gane, though I would like to see that replayed to see if Gane can sort of plaster up those parts that he was missing in the game in the first fight. But yeah, I've gone with Gane. Obviously, Tom Aspinall is going to be coming back from injury this year. Obviously, Sergey Pavlovich is in and around there, tied with Ussa. He's had a couple losses against Gane and Pavlovich also. He should probably fight Tom Aspinall next week. But when Aspinall's ready, we don't know. Hopefully for London. Maybe get Aspinall versus tied with Ussa on that London card. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? But yeah, I've gone with Cyril Gane to end out the year as the heavyweight champion. And that concludes my UFC champions, or predicting UFC champions of 2023. Some outlandish results in there, probably. More so Sean O'Malley being bantamweight champion, Leon Edwards retaining his welterweight championship, and of course Israel Adesanya becoming the top of the middleweight division once more. But let us know your predictions in the comments down below. Do you have any outsiders who you think would be champions this year? Maybe Bilal Muhammad. Maybe he could be champion. He certainly deserved it in a shot. And has capabilities to beat the top of this division. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gage, perhaps. Conor McGregor. Obviously, if he beat Michael Chandler, you probably would see him in a title shot next. And who knows? But yes, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. We'll be doing a lot more content. Of course, it's fight week again this week. So we're back with Sean Strickland versus Imagov. Make sure to follow us on social medias at CageChat MMA across all socials. And I'll see you guys on the next video.